I want to talk about stress and burnout in your career. I think this is a really important thing that all of us deal with. The sort of moment where you feel, um, I would say, normlessness, or the feelings of like you're not getting anywhere, the feelings of that you don't matter, the feelings of being a complete failure. All of those kind of things are sort of related to more on the lines of burnout, right? So stress is so I'm gonna be upfront, not an expert in stress and burnout at all, but I do know some of the sort of research in this area, like briefly, and I do like behavioral stuff, right? So what is happening there is that stress is a really important response that we have to sort of negative and positive events that happen in our life, right? And it's just kind of like a triggering of excitement, emotion, whatever, right? Like those sort of thing. And over time, if you have the sort of stress triggers triggered repeatedly, and for no apparent reason, right? Like it kind of is at random, and you don't really see the pattern, or your body can't sort of pick up on that particular pattern. You start to develop sort of burnout signals, right? And you start to develop this clear path towards burnout where you don't necessarily have, um, any sort of response to, um, you just have an overall negative response and you feel really negative. From what I understand, I don't understand that much, right? Like I can't sort of say that. But from what I understand, you're going to feel all the sort of prolonged negative emotions that you're going to feel, excuse me, that you'd feel like with depression or something along those lines, right? The body only has a certain number of responses that we feel, and we just know it's not good, right? Like that's basically it, right? Your body is not going to be some profoundly different. It's not going to have any sort of triggers. Like in different ways. It's not going to be easily to identify in any of those things. But it's just not feeling good repeatedly for a long time about where you belong, and feeling like you don't belong and you can't get anywhere, and all of those kind of things. And now somebody that's a burnout and stress person is probably going to be like, well, however, you know what I want to point out is that you know definitively how you get to remove all of that kind of stuff is you want to get to the point where you start feeling that you're making progress, and you sort of see clearly identified progress, and you're just enjoying yourself again. So how do you actually get there? It's actually really quite easy, right? That's where you just pull back, you disengage, you go into things that you want to enjoy for the sake of enjoying it, right? um, you just go into sort of pleasure mode and you think about things that are pleasurable and that sort of aid you, right? And then the other thing is you stop worrying, you stop sort of comparing yourself and thinking about all the other things that we go through. It's sort of these patterns of behavior where you want to sort of situate yourself in terms of society, and sort of thinking about where you want to be, right? And instead, you just simply are in the moment, right? And it's a lot more of getting into that sort of response where you're just enjoying the fact that you are you in the moment, and that's it. And so how do you get there, right? Well, you seek out things that are pretty pleasurable for what you're actually doing, right? And this could change at any time, right? So something, you could be pursuing something that is completely pleasurable, and it just starts piling up, and you have demands from this thing, you don't like it, and it changes and it becomes sort of a stress trigger, and you get burnt out from that as well, right? But what you want to do is just find things in your life that you pull back and that are compartmentalized, that allow you to do your life and allow you to get variety, um, and just do different things and try different things and sort of dabble in different areas with no no reason to sort of look at, longevity or outcomes or anything like that. You just kind of go along and just enjoy it, right? So this might be pursuing a craft, you know, it might be pursuing an art thing. It might be, in fact, it might be doing something that's really technical, right? Like learning how to trade stocks, which I would never recommend on this podcast, but it could be something like that if you just want to be pleasurable. It could be, learning how to solve mathematical equations, whatever it is that sort of gives you pleasure and that you're like, hey, I want to try this thing, or cooking or whatever, and sort of trying those different things in different ways, and just kind of playing around and viewing yourself as if you're just the hero in a story that's just playing around and goofing around. Like imagine yourself as what it was like when you have those intense pleasurable moments when you're a kid and just kind of screwing around with things. And if you can get to that a lot more, right? Like the moment of, I think play is so underrated in terms of getting to the moment where you just feel like, hey, I'm doing okay. I'm having fun. I'm just playing with things, moving things around. There's nothing that is like, it's not bad or it's not good. It's just this is just a really good sort of moment. The other thing that I think is like, we don't stress enough is physical stuff, like doing physical things in different physical ways, right? Like yoga, moving your body. I like to swim. Could be walking. Could be anything that you get that. Um, you know, a lot of this sort of pattern is looking at how we evolutionary would have done things, right? I'm not a big admirer of the sort of evolutionary thought, but the idea that we used to walk a lot is probably part of it. We used to walk and lay around a lot, right? Like having that as part of like what we do is walk for several miles or whatever a day and have that part of your pattern. Sometimes you might have to do some running, right? Like just make it fun, make your life enjoyable. You know, Ultimately what I'm saying at the end of the day, how do you get out of burnout is you just say, okay, I'm just gonna say it on this podcast. You just say fuck it, right? Like you just at the end of the day, you say fuck it in a bucket, and you just live your life, and you stop worrying about all that kind of stuff. It's like that moment where you have like kind of the snap, right? You remember? I don't know if you ever watched this movie, Office Space. The guy just snaps. He has like this moment, and he just snaps. All of a sudden, he's just like, whatever, just fuck it in a bucket. um, and I just want you to like know that, right? Like that's what it is, and that's how you get out of burnout. Is you just kind of live your life. You walk as if you're a good person because you're all good, decent human beings for the most part. Um, Live your life, love it. Forget about all of the sort of nonsense of being this way or that way and all of that. Just live it and be part of who you are. And I know, so I'm preaching to the choir, but like I'm preaching to myself, right? Like ultimately it's hard to do, but I try to practice this as much as possible instead of getting sucked into all of the bullshit that you might get sucked into. You just say fuck it in a bucket and you live your life and have a good time and spend some time with family and friends and do all of that stuff that you want to do and just go. And that's it. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.